The year is coming to a close, so it is time that we do one of our top 10 lists, and that is the top 10 horror that I've read this year. Now, most of these books did come out this year, but a few of these are just some that I actually read this year and had come out a few years prior. Let's talk about some bookish stuff and weird things. Also, if you want to get a shirt, I'll have a link down below where you can get one for yourself. All right, so I'm going to go in order of, it's not least to best. They're all really great. I like them a lot. Some I just liked more than others. We're gonna go from 10 up to the number 1 book. And if some of you have been around the channel, I bet there's a chunk of you that know what my number 1 book is already, but shh, don't tell anyone. We're not there yet. Maybe you're wrong. You're probably not wrong. All right, so number 10 is Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. This book is a strange and weird book that has occult themes, and it takes place in Mexico and follows the film industry. And it centers around the story about this film that never got completed. And now it's called Silver Nitrate because this film that never got completed was on this reel made with silver nitrate, which is a very highly flammable substance. Now, there's this filmmaker and her friend. Her friend is the actor. She does editing, and they end up meeting this director of this old film, and then they decide at some point that they're going to complete the film. However, this film was supposedly like a spell that was being cast. There's a lot of different ideas of what the spell was actually for, and it gets all crazy, and it's so weird, and I loved it. It was so good. This is my favorite book of Silvia Moreno-Garcia's that I've ever read. All right, so the next one is Spin a Black Yarn by Josh Malerman. Was there any doubt that I wouldn't have a Josh Malerman book on here? Well, if you're new, you might not know that, but I do love Josh Malerman. Here on this channel, we love our Malerman books. And Spin a Black Yarn, I thought, was absolutely fantastic. All the stories in it are weird and wondrous. There are, I can't remember if it's 4 or 5. There's a story about a house that's half haunted, but which half is it? Is it the top or the bottom? Is it one wall or the other? Is it part of the stairs? Who knows? There's another about, it's kind of like a sci-fi story called like the Jupiter Drop, where this guy gets this weird apartment that's glass that like they drop into Jupiter, and if you think you see any life on Jupiter, no you didn't. My favorite story, it's called Doug and Judy by the Housewasher. And the title is so unassuming because I'm like, this will probably be all right. It was my absolute favorite story in there. It's so emotional, and you see Doug and Judy, and they were just these jerkholes, like horrible, rich, uptight a-holes that everyone hates. But what happens in it, you see a glimpse of who they used to be, and it's like the saddest thing ever, and it's so emotional, and it was so beautiful and so well done, and I love that story so much. And then there's, like I said, there's 1 or 2 other stories, and my brain is not remembering them right now because it's been a long time since I read it. I should go back and reread it. The next one is Shers Cord by Scott Leeds. And I love a story that is horror that has to do with music. If you can incorporate music into the story, there's a good chance I'm gonna like it. I also have that thing with dreams too, like dreams and horror. I love stuff like that. So Shers Cord, there's this myth that this composer named Schrader, his wife had died, and he thought that if he could figure out this chord to open up the veil between the living and the dead, he could bring her back. But stuff goes awry, right? And then did Schrader ever really exist? Is this a real thing? So there's this guy, his dad owns a record shop, and he works in A&R, and he signs bands and finds all this talent and whatnot. And when his father passes, him and his dad, they had a huge falling out. He comes back, finds out he gets the record store that his dad left to him. And he's like, F this, I don't want it. He can just, we'll get rid of it, whatever. And the lawyer's like, well, hang on. You got to think about the people that worked there for so many years. You can't just like cut them off like that without, at least like think about it a little bit, calm down, give it a day or two. And he's like, okay, whatever, fine. And he's pretty sure he's not going to change his mind. And then before him and his sisters are about to leave, the lawyer's like, oh yeah, by the way, I also have to give you this. And he gives them this case, this black case. The son's like, what is this? It has a note on the top from his dad that says, I told you they were real. He's like, what? And he opens it, and it says Shers Cord, and there's these 4 different records. Maybe they play them. That would be really dumb. Well, of course they do, because there'd be no book if they didn't play them, you guys. And then they open the realm between the living and the dead, and stuff gets crazy, and it's awesome, and I loved it. Also, if you're interested in any of these books, I will have links down below to those. Those are affiliate links, which is a great way to support the channel and to support indie bookstores. All right, so the next one is, this one is a little bit older. It's not a newer book from this year, and that is Haunted by Darcy Coates, which may be my favorite book I've read of hers out of everything I've read so far by her. I think I've read like 5 or 6 of her books, and she has a ton more. Haunted, it follows these kids, and, well, they're not kids, they're teenagers, whatever. And their friend was last seen in this certain area in the woods. And, you know, she was posting stuff to social media, and all of a sudden she stops, and this one guy in the friend group who had like a crush on her is like gets super worried because he was kind of like super stalking her social media and whatever. And then she turns up missing. So they don't feel like the cops are doing enough and whatnot. They take it on themselves that they're going to go out to the woods and try and find her. When they go to do this, too, a camera had been found in the river and turned into the police station. And they see some of these pictures, and in the pictures, and it was from their friend's camera, is what looks like some weird, creepy giant creature. Is it a Bigfoot? I don't know. They go out into the woods, and then something starts hunting them. What is it? I don't know. You'll have to read it to find out. It's awesome. I have a standalone review for that I will link down below if you're more interested to hear a little bit about more of that. I think I have standalone reviews for almost every single one of these books, so those will all be down in the darkness, and you can check those out if you are interested. The next book is Devolution by Max Brooks. This one totally took me by surprise, and it was recommended to me because I love cryptids, and this is a Bigfoot horror. I went into it without too much of an expectation. You know, I figured it'd be probably pretty good, but it blew my dang socks off. It was so good. There's this little eco village, and they're up on Mount Rainier, and they're really self-sustainable. It's all green. Everything's controlled by like Wi-Fi and whatnot. Mount Rainier erupts. All their Wi-Fi is cut off, and the escape route out of there, not happening. Magma, lava, stuff. They can't get out. You know, they figure, oh, a couple days, someone will come for us, whatever. But what they don't realize is the other massive amounts of destruction that has happened everywhere around in the surrounding areas. And so they have to survive up there. And at some point, you know, food starts disappearing from like the fruit trees, animals in the area start disappearing. And all of a sudden, they seem to realize that they are surrounded by a group of Bigfoot. And the Bigfoot have run out of food. And so, well, the humans might be their only source of food now, and they're going to have to survive. Will they do it? Who knows? Will they fight back? You'll have to read it to find out. And it is awesome. And I feel like if that were ever a situation that happened, that it was portrayed so well, like that could really be how it would go. Cannot recommend that book enough. It was so good. Next up, we have Lone Women by Victor Laval. And I knew when I read this book that it would definitely be in my top 10 because it was so good. It's so weird. And it follows this main character, Adelaide. She leaves California with a quickness because some crap hits the fan and she needs to get the F out of Dodge. And she takes this giant steamer trunk with her that sometimes it makes noises or there's something weird in there. She's got a secret. And so she's gonna go head out to like, I don't know if it's the Midwest. I don't remember the exact state, but it's one of the states. It might have been Montana. A lot of plains. You can look for miles and miles and miles. The wind just whips across it. And so anyways, what they're doing is they're allowing anyone, if you could come and tame the land, doesn't matter if you are Black, Asian, a woman, whatever. You could come out there, you tame the land, you get to keep it. She goes out there with high hopes, except for she's got a weird secret in that steamer trunk, and you better hope it doesn't get out because people are gonna die if it does. And it is a crazy story. It was so not what I expected, and man, it was so good. The first book I read by Victor LaValle was The Ballad of Black Tom, and I thought that was fantastic. This one, even better. I look forward to see what Victor LaValle will do next, because the books that I've read have been absolutely fantastic. I keep saying that I need to read The Changeling. I do. There's so many books I need to read, and that's definitely in my 2024 to be reads, because he's a fantastic author. So the next one is Nestlings by Nat Cassidy. This book is so freaking weird, and I love it. So there's this couple, and they have a kid, Anna. She is disabled, and she became paralyzed from the waist down when she had her baby. She had a really traumatic birth, and it caused paralysis. They have a really horrible landlord. He's racist, he's a POS, he loves Fox News, and he can go to hell. Anyway, they win this lottery for this really fancy apartment complex, and they go there, and they're shown this apartment, and it's up on like one of the top floors, and Anna's like, oh, man, she feels like they shouldn't take it because, you know, the stairs, what if the elevators break down, like if there's a fire, what the heck are we supposed to do? She's kind of convinced that they don't want to take it, but she kind of like stops listening to her inner tuition and is like, you know what, we deserve this beautiful big apartment and a new start and all that. So they take the apartment, and then stuff gets weird. Concierge guy smiles way too big, is super creepy. The elevator dudes are like weird little goblin type creatures. And when Anna looks out the window by her baby's room, she feels like something is missing from when the last time she looked across the way. Something weird. And then at some point in time, she notices these weird bites on her baby, and her baby starts acting all strange. And then they find out too that there's this whole other part of the building with all these really fancy elite almost celebrities from another era, which is weird. It was a very unique and strange, emotional survival story, and it's so good. I love Nat Cassidy. I've read Mary and this one, and I loved both of those. I thought they were both great. I think I like this one better, although I have a soft spot in my heart for Nadine from Mary. I didn't until towards the end of the story. I hated her, and then I was like, oh man, Nadine. The next one, and now we're into the top three. So number 3 is Whale Fall by Daniel Kraus. That book is wild. It was so much more than I knew going in, because it's the story of this guy who gets swallowed by a whale. You know, the biblical story, Jonah the whale, whatever. But this is a horror, and it's about survival, and it's about this guy. He had a pretty terrible relationship with his dad growing up, and his dad treated him like crap and was an alcoholic. And one thing he did do was teach his son how to scuba dive and all this information on the ocean and the creatures of the ocean and this, that, and the other. But they had a really bad falling out where him and his dad never talked again at a certain point. And his dad ended up getting cancer, and his mom and sisters at one point were like, hey, can you please, you know, at least talk to him? And he's like, no, I don't care. F him. He treated me like crap. He doesn't deserve it. Da, 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 da. So his father passes. His father, he committed suicide and basically threw himself into the ocean and weighted himself down. And so a good while later, guilt starts getting to him, and he decides he's going to go down to where his dad threw himself into the ocean and try and get at least the bones back, because there's a grave with no body in the grave, and he thinks, you know, maybe if he does that, he can start to heal his relationship with his mom and his sisters. So he goes down there. He swims out towards where this big trench is, and a big giant squid comes up. But also at the same time, a giant whale is coming up, and that giant squid is its favorite food. And the squid wraps a tentacle that gets caught around him and then pulls the kid inside the whale. And when he gets in there, it's about the will to fight to survive. But he also starts hearing this voice that he may be hallucinating or maybe not. And it seems like it could possibly be his father, and they have maybe the conversations that they couldn't have in life. And it was so moving and so sad and just so powerful that it blew my freaking socks off. This is another one. It was so good. Cannot recommend it enough. Next one is Looking Glass Sound by Catriona Ward. Catriona Ward has my heart. She has the twistiest, just strange books, and this one was no different. It was twisty and strange. It follows this kid, and when he's grown up, you know, he doesn't really have any friends, and his uncle passes. They end up inheriting his old cottage, so they go there for the summers, and he ends up making these two really close friends. And also, at the same time, there's like this weird serial killer that will go into people's houses and take Polaroids of their kids while they're sleeping and then like leave them there while he has like their knife to his throat or whatever. And he doesn't kill them, but like the fact that he was in there and holding knives or daggers to their children's throats, that's pretty effed up. It's a matter of trying to figure out who is the dagger man of this place. It follows the story too of these kids and what happened, and like it's like a book within a book within a book. So the main character decides he's going to write his life story, and he returns there later in life. One of his friends that he went to college with, basically he had told the whole story to. It was really traumatic, and he really found a friend in this person because of all the weird crap that happened when he lived in this place. And that friend went and stabbed him in the back and wrote a book about it and claimed it as his own. So that was pretty effed up. And so he decides he's going to go back to this cottage that he hasn't been to in years and like rewrite it and tell the real story of what happened with his friends and finding a dead body and with this killer, the dagger man. And when he gets there, he finds all these notes with this green writing that was like the signature writing of his friend he had in college, and he thinks he's going crazy, and he's like, where is this coming from, you know? And it's so weird and twisty, and I loved it. Sad, it's emotional, and just it was a great story. That's one I need to reread. It's so good. All these are so good, whatever. And the number one story is, can you guess it? Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. This book blew my socks off, but not only did it blow my socks off, they like went out the room and then out the door outside and then hit the neighbor's dog in the head. They flew a long way. It takes place in the 1800s. And there's this orphanage where all these boys stay, and the age range is between like 5 to, I believe, 17. There's 3 different priests, or I guess they're priests. Yeah. So there's 3 different priests that run it. There is the one who's like the good one. There's one that's an a-hole, and there's one that's really old. And then there's this other guy, Brother Johnson, who's there on like work release instead of being in prison. So he's kind of, I don't know, he's a loose cannon, we'll say. And on a dark and stormy night, something bad comes to the door. They bring in this guy who's all effed up, and turns out he's like possessed by demons, and he ends up dying, and all the demons are released into this orphanage. And some of the spirits go into the kids, and then all of a sudden the kids start taking sides, and it's like a effed up spiritual warfare. It's violent, it's gruesome. It makes you question faith and think about things that are beyond, and it's so good and so moving. There's a part with that loose cannon guy, Brother Johnson, that like just rips your freaking heart out at the end, and like at the end how they ended it. Oh man, it's so good. It's so moving. To me, that's what makes a book so good. Like if it just moves me and it makes me feel something so emotional, and this book just, holy crap, did it make me have an intense reaction to it. It's so good. I cannot recommend that book enough. If you were to read one book off this list this year, Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. Or any of these, but honestly, my favorite obviously is Boys in the Valley. When I like a book a lot, I don't shut up about it. It's annoying, even to myself. But everyone should read it. So, if you were a fan of where I talk about multiple books that I have read or am reading, the next video coming up will be about that. So stick around, check it out. And if you had fun hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.